This is the weekly energy reading for May 31st through June 6th, guided by the I Ching and the Tao Te Ching. Some weeks ask what must fall away. Others show what becomes possible when the right boundary is finally lived from within. Last week's reading was Hexagram 49, Revolution. What unfolded through the week showed that this was never only about outer change. It was about what within was gaining authority. Again and again, the energy returned to the same correction. Do not let emotional urgency take command. Do not let pressure decide what gets fed. Do not confuse intensity with truth. This is where the distinction between the inferior self and the superior self became important. Both were present. The inferior self wanted quick relief. It wanted reaction, control, and immediate resolution. It fed on urgency and grew stronger when pressure took the lead. The superior self moved differently. It stayed patient. It allowed gradual refinement. It did not abandon inner balance just because discomfort was present. That was the deeper pattern of the week. Not dramatic transformation. A quieter transfer of authority. Patience became protective. Composure became strength. Humility deepened the field. Disciplined softness began to hold what reactivity could not. That is what made revolution real in lived form, not upheaval. Maturation. Something false was losing authority. Something steadier was beginning to lead. That is the ground the week leaves behind. Because once inner change has become real, the next question is no longer only what must be transformed. The next question is how to give that truth a form strong enough to hold what is now approaching. This week opens with Hexagram 60, changing at line 5 to Hexagram 19. Limitation moving toward approach. Hexagram 60 is water above lake. The lake receives and contains. The water above brings depth, pressure, and consequence. Together they form the image of flow that requires measure. That is the heart of the reading. This is a week about boundaries that make growth possible, not harsh limits, not fear-based restraint, not control for its own sake. Right measure. Hexagram 60 teaches that life needs form if it is going to move cleanly. Without limits, energy scatters. Without guidelines, attention drifts. Without restraint, excess begins to govern. So the reading begins by asking what needs to be defined: purpose, responsibility, conduct, the line that protects what is true from being diluted. But this hexagram is careful. Too much limitation creates rebellion. Too much harshness creates strain. Even limits must have limits. So the work here is not rigid control. It is intelligent containment. A structure that supports life rather than crushing it. A boundary that keeps growth honest. Then line 5 makes the condition more specific. Any limitation you would place on another must first be lived by yourself. That is the turning point. This line brings the reading inward before it moves outward. Do not ask for discipline you are unwilling to embody. Do not ask for truth you are unwilling to live. Do not correct others from a place you have not yet corrected in yourself. That is why the line emphasizes gentleness, innocence, and truthfulness. Influence is clean only when it is lived first. This shifts limitation away from control and into integrity. The question is no longer how to impose order. It is how to become aligned enough that order can be trusted. That is why the reading changes to Hexagram 19. Approach. Hexagram 19 is earth above lake. The lake below receives and responds. The earth above supports, covers, and draws near. Together, they form the image of something beneficial approaching through steadiness, patience, and care. This is a beautiful movement. The reading does not move from limitation into restriction. It moves from right measure into approach. That means the boundary was not an obstacle. It was the preparation. When limitation is practiced truthfully, something good can draw near. Progress begins to gather. Light returns. But Hexagram 19 carries its own instruction. Do not lose discipline just because conditions improve. Success is not permission for carelessness. Approach is not permission for ego. The growth now approaching was made possible by conscientious behavior. Only continued modesty allows it to deepen. First, set the boundary, then embody it yourself. Then allow beneficial movement to come forward. Because the real question beneath the week is not only what should be limited, it is what must be emptied, quieted, and released, so what is good can actually arrive. The deeper reflection for this week comes from Chapter 3 of the Tao Te Ching. If you overesteem great men, people become powerless. If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. The master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores, by weakening their ambition and toughening their resolve. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion. In those who think that they know, practice not doing, and everything will fall into place. This chapter speaks to the danger of feeding the wrong things: ambition, comparison, possession, the need to elevate, grasp, and prove. That is why it fits this reading so well. Hexagram 60 begins with limitation, a boundary, a measure, a conscious refusal to let excess govern the field. Then line 5 makes the lesson more exact. Any limitation placed on another must first be lived by the self. That changes everything, because the reading is no longer about control. It is about integrity, not managing others, not demanding discipline outwardly while living disorder inwardly. It asks for self-government first. Chapter 3 deepens that beautifully. If ambition is overfed, people become restless. If possession is overvalued, distortion follows. The problem is not only what people do, it is what the field has been taught to hunger for. That is the deeper connection to Hexagram 60. Limitation is not deprivation. It is the refusal to keep feeding what weakens the spirit. It clears space. It reduces noise. It lowers the temperature of wanting. It helps the inner life return to what is simple and true. That is why the chapter speaks of emptying minds and filling cores. This is not emptiness as lack. It is emptiness as release from excess thought, excess desire, excess striving. And that release is what makes right approach possible. Because the reading changes to Hexagram 19, something beneficial draws near, but it does not arrive through grasping. It arrives when the field has been cleared enough to receive it. That is the paradox of the week. The less ambition governs, the more strength becomes available. The less ego performs, the more real influence becomes possible. Chapter 3 protects this movement from becoming moral pressure. The master does not lead by overfilling the world with commands. She leads by reducing what is unnecessary and strengthening what is essential. That is exactly the shape of this reading. Set the boundary. Live it first. Clear out what does not belong. Then let what is good approach. This week does not ask for stricter performance. It asks for cleaner motives. Less overvaluing, less overfeeding, less unnecessary desire, more simplicity, more integrity, more inner steadiness. Practice not doing, and everything falls into place. That line may be the deepest medicine here, because once the right limit is in place, force is no longer needed. What is true can come forward on its own.